Welcome everybody to this SUSECon. For us too, it's the first presentation of the day. I hope you had good ones before. My name is Stefan Behlert. I'm one of the product managers working on SUSE Manager, as you can see here. And I have with me...
I'm Miguel Perez Colino. You killed my father, prepare to die. I'm the Director of Engineering and Product Management for SUSE Manager. We want to talk about operational efficiency. And this is because, it's one topic that I always keep very close to myself because I started my career as a system administrator. And that is like being a Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine. So once a sysadmin, always a sysadmin. You know, it's something you keep inside, your pagers beeping, oh my God, the server is down. All those things that many of us have been through, probably. How many of you have been a sysadmin? Okay, so many of us have, how many of you have carried a pager or mobile phone, so whenever something was down, you have to connect? Okay, good. So this is one of the things that we want to take care of, you know. SUSE Manager is a tool that is intended for the system administrator, specifically for the Linux system administrator, okay? So we're going to go a bit through the challenges, and there are two very interesting challenges. One is the paradox of patching. I don't know if Sebastian is here. Sebastian is a colleague that invented the idea of paradox of patching, and then the snowflake syndrome, okay? Then we're going to talk about tools and procedures. Of course, we're going to mention slightly SUSE Manager, right? Right? And then, of course, we'll talk about the outcomes. So let me start with the challenges, okay? I think one of the things that makes you feel more comfortable when you leave the work and you are a system administrator is knowing that everything is as predictable as possible, okay? So you know you're not going to get a page, okay? So getting predictability provides peace of mind. To get predictability, you need to have repeatability. So you do one thing and again and again and again, and it always provides the same outcome, okay? So for that, we need to improve on provisioning, on configuration, on deployment. So provisioning, we need to not make it manual and slow. That is one of the issues. We need to automate provisioning. Nowadays, there's a lot of more tools that you can combine with SUSE Manager, like for example, Terraform. Internally, we use Terraform or OpenTofu, if you prefer. The good thing about SUSE Manager is that it combines well with other things, okay? It's not the typical tool that you have to use it and that's it. It's that it combines with other things. So the provisioning, SUSE Manager can do a lot of provisioning. Then configuration, you have to keep configuration consistent. You have to keep it under control. Not SSH into one system, change the configuration and leave. That is the snowflake syndrome, okay? All the systems look the same, none are the same. You know, everyone, I've seen customers that they are concerned in rebooting a system because they do not know if the system is going to behave the same after rebooting, okay? So to have consistency, you have to have control on the configuration, okay? There are many ways to do it. We're going to talk about being able to do it. Performance, of course, you have to reduce what you're running in the system to make use of the resources better. Okay, so that reduction should be done, that performance should be checked, that performance should be analyzed, and then whenever you make a change, if you see a change in performance, it's like, hey, something is happening here. So troubleshooting, you get it at the right moment, you can do it nicely, and then of course you can roll back in case there's an issue with whatever change you did. Compliance, time and labor, again, repeatability, and this is all just for the deployment, for the day one of operations. Okay, day 0 you plan, day 1 you deploy, day 2 you maintain. So in day 1, we need to take care of provisioning, configuration, and deployment. And now Stefan is going to talk about how do we keep that. And then and then for day 2, of course, day 2, operations, you know, your daily operations. It's about how we patch. Patching is critical. And the paradox of patching, and Sebastian is not here, it's a pity because I would tell him to talk about this. I don't know if it's happening to you. There are systems that are so critical. And I'm thinking this I remember I used to manage an ERP running on True 64. That was a long time ago, you know? And it was like, oh, we have to patch it. It was like, oh my God. You know, the candles, we sacrifice a CD. Okay, yes, we're ready to go, you know? So the paradox of patching is that the most critical systems are the ones you patch the least and the ones who need it the most, okay? So it's one of the things that we need to get into it. So if you're not good at something, you have to repeat it until you are good at it, okay? And the risk of that is that you can fail. Of course you can fail. But it's good to repeat until you start not failing and you become very comfortable with it. And it's like, okay, we have to patch it. Okay, let's do it. And just like that, okay? So for that, managing the patching is critical. Having all the patches together is critical. Having the patches next to the machines you're going to apply to them helps a lot. Testing the patches could be a really good thing to be able to do it. And applying the patches without having to reboot helps a lot, especially when you are talking about very big machines, okay? What else? Compliance. If you are sysadmins, you probably have dealt with the security team, right? They come in there, hey, your systems are not secure, you have this list of vulnerabilities, you have to cover them. It's like, headache, you know? So the thing is that they check with their own tools, but it wouldn't be bad for you to check with your own tools, right? To be able to say, okay, are we compliant? Are we compliant enough to be able to do that? And you can even get to the point in which you check on your own, you provide that to security, and they don't come. Okay, so this is one of those things that being proactive really helps a lot. Okay, in not having suddenly a queue of things to do at the worst moment in time. Okay, so that's about security and compliance. And finally, health and monitoring, which has a lot to do with performance, okay? Health and monitoring is about keeping things healthy and checking they are healthy. You need to get the awareness. I come from defense, and there's this concept of situational awareness. Situational awareness is when you know what is going on around you. So you can infer what your actions are going to change, so you can make better decisions, okay? So what we want to do with our tooling, and Stefan will of course explain, he's looking at me like, Miguel, you're getting me in trouble. So it's about increasing the operational awareness that you have with your own systems and your ability to act on them. So far so good. Any questions, any comments, any jokes? No? Okay. Now, about patch consistency. Patch consistency for very, very critical systems, and nowadays with cloud, it's even easier, okay? You want to check that your patches are properly applied, okay? So when you start automating, you normally start automating little things until the moment you can start automating and deploy a whole environment that looks like your own environment. When you reach to that point, you can go to cloud, deploy your environment, do the testing, destroy it if you want, test things that are weird or whatever, and then clean it up. And how much does it cost? Very little. In that case, cloud is a very good use case for cloud. When you want to test things, you automate the deployment, you test, you clean it up. Okay. So some other people is like, okay, the system is too critical. We have two systems, system A, system B. If system A fails, we know we have system B, so you can try things on system B and then apply them to system A, right? This kind of paradigm of having two systems helps a lot. So what can we do? We need to be able to do the baseline. Okay, we install a set of packages, which is a baseline. We know which packages are there installed, and then whenever we want to change it, we add another baseline. We change the packages and we test that baseline. That baseline works correctly, we pass it on to the next testing level. Works correctly, pass it on to the next testing level. Normally it's production already, okay? So we learn from developers. This has been done in development for years and years and years. So we learn from them and we apply it to systems, okay? And we can apply it, again, operationally speaking, and we can provide for them environments with the new patching level so they can try them themselves, and then they can say, okay, this is okay, let's go to production, okay? And now, tools and procedures. This is your part.
Yeah, We have heard a lot about that and a lot about the theory. Now a little bit into practical things with SUSE Manager. I have to admit one thing. I will not be able to talk about everything that SUSE Manager can and does, simply because it's so powerful. We can't handle that, but we have a boost for that, and I will go a little bit into why we use SUSE Manager here as an example and as a tool. We heard a lot about things that are costly, that are complex. Miguel mentioned the compliance and the security officer standing behind you saying you need to be compliant. But at the same time, your financial advisor is there and says, oh man, yes, please stay compliant, but no costs, please. And of course, everything has to be done tomorrow, or better, yesterday. And it doesn't matter how complex it is. And those of us who have been admins know that this is a triangle where you don't want to be, like the Bermuda Triangle. But on the other side, we have also been on the other side where we say, make it fast because there is a breach, there is a zero-day exploit. We have listed here some of the parts that we can help you with SUSE Manager here. Because in the end, that's what a good tool should do. It should help, it should offer guidance, and it should make sure that you can do the work, not just as an admin, but also as the business director who is responsible for the cost, or as the manager who has to explain to the board, yes, there was an XZ vulnerability, but we were never affected. We talked a little bit about complexity and mentioned it. Yeah, what is so complex about managing a system? I mean, it's hardware, we put software on and that's it, right? We all who did it and tried to install something know a little bit better. That picture here shows it a little bit. And don't worry, I think you get also the slides at the end of the conference. And if not, contact us. There are, of course, the repositories or channels, depending on what operating system you have, that come from the vendor, where you have everything, the base system, where you have all the stuff that you need to patch, where you wait for everything that you need to get. That would be fine if that would be only one repository. But depending on which vendor you have, it's more complex. You need to activate maybe something inside of the channel. You might need to select which you want, which version you want. Do you want or need Python 3? Do you need Python 2? Do you need Python 3.6, 11, 9, 10, whatever there is? And on top of that, you have your own channels, your own tool set in your company that you use, your own source of information, your own source of software, represented here with custom repository. That could be also test cases, maybe. The test cases that your QA uses to ensure that you're still compliant. That could be a set of rules to make sure you have the certifications followed and kept up to date. And you should get all of that in mind and all under one head, as we say, and make sure that it works together and is delivered in the public cloud, on-prem, on virtual machines, wherever they are, and the right thing. And of course, it should happen that you update at the right time. Nothing makes more fun as at the end of a 4-day running test shop, the system goes down because you install a maintenance update. You can hear your user scream far away if you do that. But that's a complex scenario. And in a lot of cases, it's a non-complex scenario when it comes to the admin side, because there are not enough people. The understaffed IT is a phrase that become a challenge today for a lot of business. With SUSE Manager, we want to enable one person to be able to manage all of that, to have this under control, or delegate parts of that so that he can concentrate on what's important so that there's free time because you have less complexity to do what matters most, to make the systems not just being up, but doing the job where the mission critical applications run on top. And of course, it would be easy, as I said, if you had one vendor. But the situation nowadays is different. How many of you have more than one Linux in your company? And nearly all I see are raising their hand. Because, let's be honest, there are ISV certifications for one system, but not for the other. For version A, but not B. And my own developers might prefer the green over the yellow or the blue or the red operating system. The next group's developers may be different. And that adds to the complexity that is there. Because, yes, it's all Linux. It has all the same kernel, right? It has all the same tools, right? Well, I heard a no in the audience, and you're right. Even if there are the same tools, it might be a different version with different options, with different behavior. And if you think the tools haven't changed in the last 20 years, have a look at the deprecated section of any vendor you have here. You will find quite a lot that have changed. Sometimes they get removed, sometimes not. But you need to know. And which one do you use? And how do you apply an update? Which tool to use? Do you want to learn it for every system that you have? And if you think that is already a job you can do, keep in mind, with every new version, this can change dramatically. Anybody saying modules here? No, I don't do that. And that complexity adds to the cost. Let's be honest. Cost not necessarily in money, also that, but also in time. Because you have to learn. You have to know what you do. And if you use the wrong version of the tool or you got an update that changes something, you have to look into it to learn. And then you have to do it again. Patching here, patching there, installing that update. If you ever did it with 10 machines manually, you know this is time consuming. Even if it's all the same machine, there is always a difference in the setup. No two machines are the same. What can help you here to free you from these, boring tasks? Updates, applying, choosing when to do the update, deciding which update you need, which dependency to fulfill is automation. So what we have done in SUSE Manager is we have added automation in a lot of levels, in a lot of tools, and with a lot of the various types of frameworks that we have. Is it enough automation? Well, there will always be a case when you say, can't we automate this, can't we automate that? So it's an ongoing process. But the good thing is we do this independent of what operating system you're using. Remember the 16 Linux versions we had there, not counting versions?
Yeah.
And I think it were 16. I've lost sometimes count. We are having so many. You can automate for all of them. And you can do it easily. You don't have to think about which tool do I use. You just say, hey, here's the configuration. Here's the system. Do your job. And it will do it. You install it once and run it many times. And I'm not talking about Java here, I'm talking about SUSE Manager. So it works and it's really written once, running many times. Of course, there's always room for improvement, as we know. Mm-hmm. So you still have to set up the automation. That can't be automated. That's the culprit. Sorry for that. Automation is good because it helps you to get rid of the manual task, the repeating task, the things that are boring, that you don't want to do. Everybody of us wants to do interesting things. But there are also interesting things that are not boring, but we also don't necessarily want to do it.
I need to ask you folks, how many of you try to automate your tasks like every time? No? Most of the time. Like, I used to have the rule of the thumb is like, if I'm going to do it more than 5 times, I will try to automate it. Does it work more or less? What tools do you use? Do you use Salt, Ansible, shell scripting? Ansible? Yeah, Salt, okay.
I heard
Good.
Salt, I heard Ansible, and there was a third one, I think. Salt and Ansible. Anybody? Anything else? Bash.
Bash, yeah.
You're my man.
Yes. I mean, just for the record, SUSE Manager comes with Salt integrated, but as I said before, we would like to play nicely with others. So if you want to use Ansible with SUSE Manager, you could do it. So the thing is that there are like 3 layers. Layer 1, just doing configuration management, just having configuration files and deploying them. You can do that with SUSE Manager without knowing any automation. Okay. Layer 2 is using Salt for automation, which is pretty simple, easy to do. We have something called formulas that integrate in the UI, so you can even gather some data from the UI with the same formula for different systems. And layer 3 is using Ansible control nodes with Ansible automation that you can apply. So right now that one is working. It's still green. We need to add more features to make it more consumable, but you have all these options. And again, this is about choice. You know, as our CEO says, choice happens. So we're trying to provide you choice. So if you're with Ansible, we're happy with that. And we have many customers that are using together SUSE Manager and Ansible, and they are very happy with it. So now, please, continue. I had to.
Perfectly fine. So keep in mind, all that automation is also important when it comes to security. And I guess that's where most of the daily work comes into play. You want to know which of your systems are secure, which are not, and how to get rid of that. And a side note on here, if you want to know more about what we can do with automation and with security audits, there's A, a session tomorrow about SUSE Manager and what's new in it, and B, we have a demo palooza at the end of this conference where you can see quite a lot. I'm not saying more here. And of course, we have a booth. But security means you need to know what's wrong. You need to know how to fix it. And sometimes you need to know when to fix it. Because in the end, the detection, yes, there is something coming or needed to be fixed is one thing. To know there's a patch that I can apply to fix it, of course, everybody wants to know that. And SUSE Manager, you can see it here. And I need to see. You can see it shows you if you have everything installed, if you have a security issue that you want to get fixed or looked at least. Some of them you might say, not so critical at the moment. Don't tell this, the security officer I said this. Some you might say needs to be fixed immediately. And you have seen earlier the chain of content lifecycle management with QA, dev, and production. Do you really want to apply that security immediately on the production system because it's so important? Do you want to test it before? Because you risk to shut down the system that makes sure that you get $1 million per hour. And we have systems that are so critical. That's a question no automation can answer for you. But we have the security compliance, we have the security audits that help you to make that decision, to decide. And if you decide, this is so important, I need to jump the queue and put it immediately into production, you can do it. And we help you with that. The security advisories are shown. You will get all the information to make an educated decision. Nothing is worse than knowing there is something and you don't know how to react, or is it really serious? We try to help you. Of course, it depends also on what is available on the CVEs. It also depends on the description and the quality there. But we even, with 5.0, provide you more information there. And I'm not telling you more because tomorrow is a session about what's new, and a little bit of teasing must be okay. That helps you also with your compliance officer, because you can always say, hey, yes, I know, we have one system, but the rest is fine. And you can explain why it's fine and why it's fine to have that system. Or even better, you fix it, and when the compliance officer comes and says, hey, XZ, have you heard about it? Old stuff fixed already, we never were vulnerable, we didn't install, or we fixed it right after we had the information. This is a slide I don't like too much, but which I wanted to show you because it shows really you have that way where you go through a chain, where you have the content, the lifecycle management, where you really want to make sure that things are going in a certain direction, and where you can schedule with SUSE Manager when to apply what, into which part and into which phase. And this is a slide taken out of an SAP HANA presentation, as you can see. And you see that not just the SUSE impacts all of the various systems, but also the SUSE Manager implies to that. And this is a real-life example. We have implemented that architecture and way with real customers outside, with dozens of SAP HANA systems running. And this works. And they manage their systems there, and they reduce the problems on that end, not you, Miguel, but that end of the slide, because they can check it before.
I want to mention, many people say, how many systems do you need to make SUSE Manager profitable? Okay, can I manage 20 systems with SUSE Manager, and will it provide some value to me? Because many people say, no, you need like 100 systems. It would depend. I mean, I'm going to be a consultant now. It depends. Okay, so now it depends. We have one customer that has 17 systems. Yes, it's a weird number, 17. One of them is just the DNS. Okay, so 16 systems. And they have 12 terabytes of memory, which is around 275 hours of 4K video, which is around 10 days. So try to imagine you have to put a camera recording 4K video for 10 days before the memory gets full. Okay? This kind of systems. With this kind of systems, for them, being able to have all the patches very controlled provides really high value. And for them, using this architecture really relieves them a lot, because they're also using live patching, and he will talk more about that, okay? So I'll not get in there. But when you combine SUSE Linux Enterprise Server with SUSE Manager, with all the features around SUSE Linux, the combination is more, makes it like more than 1 + 1 + 1 = 5 instead of 3, okay? Because the whole combination is really thought to provide you with the tools you need to do operations in a very smooth way. So when they combine, instead of adding, they start multiplying. And now, please.
You mentioned live patching. That's a good segue. I'm pretty sure everybody in the room has heard about live patching and what it means. Let me nevertheless explain it in a short way. In the end, it's like you see on that picture below. It's putting up a detour. You make sure that the broken thing in the kernel is not met by anybody, that you don't run into the hole security-wise or other, but that everybody goes around. But you have to set up the detour. This is normally done by some worker, heavy workers, who run into risk of getting run over, put up some barrier, make sure that there is a detour, make sure that there are enough signs, that everybody finds the way, and that in the end everybody goes back into the right direction. This part here does your vendor for you. That's easy. It's not easy. Sorry, dear kernel developers. It's not easy. It's a hard work, But for you as a customer, that's the easy part. You get your patch. Now you need to set up the detour. You need to make sure that everything works. That's, well, a little bit of more work, because once you have set up, when to remove it. When is the hole fixed? When do you have a new road that you don't need the detour? What I mean with that is relatively simple. Let's see. It works. You see here an example taken from SP5. The numbers are, of course, in flux. They change day by day, and they stop here in April because that was the last day I collected the numbers. We released this kernel, I call it the 53, sorry if I'm not going the whole number, in June last year. And until end of April, we had 367 kernel issues with a CVE. And we had all of these kernels here being released and then to fix them. Now, yeah, that's good. Everything is fixed, right? Yeah, but every kernel here requires a reboot. Now we are back to your 10 days of video watching. Imagine that system goes down and has to go up and fill up the space. And that 12 times in that time frame. Whew. Man, that machine is ineffective. Live patching prevents that. This kernel, you see it here in bold, got the live patches. So for every critical over a CVE of 7, when it's really critical, a live patch was released for that kernel, and you could apply it. None of these kernels needed to be installed. You saved 12 times of booting. Doesn't sound like much? If you know how long it takes to boot up some of the machines, especially with the high memory, and go through BIOS and everything else that's there, install everything, get the application back running, hoping that nothing has broken in the meantime, it's a lot of time. And in the end, it doesn't stop here. Because we support this kernel, the 53, for 13 months. That means you have still, from June, 13 months on. Count yourself how many months you more have, and how many patches you most likely get, and how many reboots you can save in that time frame. And it doesn't stop there, of course, because there's more than just kernel live patching. There's also userland live patching that helps you if the glibc has an issue and other parts. So we have here, unfortunately, no glib live patch being released, so I just bring you the kernel. But that shows you that there's a huge gain in that regard. And to set it up, if you have this one and you have activated live patch, you need to know, I have live patching. If an admin accidentally installs the next kernel, all your work with setting up live patching would have been void. You can prevent this. But of course, for every vendor it's a little bit different if the vendor offers live patching. So the manager helps you with that.
Just adding, SUSE Manager is fully aware on live patching, can deploy live patching, can orchestrate the live patching for you. So again, you have SUSE Linux Enterprise Server that has live patching and a management tool that is aware of that. So it doesn't tell you, hey, this version of the kernel is not patched, you are vulnerable. No, no, no. It's fully aware that the kernel, even without rebooting, is fully patched. Okay? So, yeah. Now, sorry.
And the good thing is, it shows you are patched, even if you have not updated. You know, some people think version are everything. On an enterprise distribution, it's not. Because the enterprise philosophy is we are patching and we are not simply upgrading, because you lose performance, you lose testing and other parts. But you can show with a good tool that you're secure. That means you have also to make sure that you really monitor what you're doing, that you know what you're doing. We have Prometheus as well as Grafana available in SUSE Manager, so you can use the exporters that are available, that are coming with the various products to show the data, to make clear of them. You mentioned Slash for SAP because it's one of the SUSE products where we know that exporters are included, and honestly, I want to mention the SUSE product and not somebody else for selfish reasons. And these exporters allow you to really make sure that all the data you want to have are there, can be displayed and be shown. It's relatively easy to set up, and you see it here. But nevertheless, you need one place to collect everything and then to display and make sure that everything runs the way it should be. And also you need something to run, of course, the various monitoring tools on. And that's where you have everything inside of SUSE Manager. So you can manage your system, you can monitoring them, and you can react on what you find. I'll go relatively fast through these here, just a short look on the various things that exist. I don't want to get too deep into that because you can see it if you want in any system that's there, and it's anyway not so exciting to see. But be aware there's enough so that everything you do, you can really say this is what has happened, this is where we are going and where we have problems or where everything is fine.
I need to add one more thing. I mean, you probably know Prometheus and Grafana because of Kubernetes, right? And the thing is like, this is really good. Why don't we bring this to our systems, our Linux systems? So this is what we did. Simple as that. We get Prometheus, Grafana, we track on it, we provide the providers, it's easy to deploy, and you get the same nice aggregated data that would you get on your Kubernetes system with Prometheus and Grafana without having to have Kubernetes for that. Okay. And now the outcomes. We don't like to brag unless it's about our customers. Okay. And let me brag a bit about our customers. So we have Jessis. They have a very critical SAP environment. And the issue was that they were patching very slowly. It took them ages to patch because they were like taking very, very much care of every single patch. Okay, so they are doing now 75% faster updates. More or less, this is like patching once a year, once every 10 months, to going to patch monthly. Okay, this happens a lot with customers. That they are patching once, twice a year with a lot of effort. They add SUSE Manager, they start getting comfortable with it, they start checking on predictability, they understand how this works and how they can automate things, and they end up patching monthly, okay? Or in some cases, extraordinary, even every 2 weeks, okay? But monthly is more or less the most common patching frequency. We have Coop. I really like this customer, really like. We have been working with them, I don't know if it's 12, 15 years, something like that. It's like we've been together like forever, okay? It's Coop Switzerland, okay? And they have many supermarkets around Switzerland. It's highly distributed. So try to imagine they have 100, 200 something supermarkets. They have something like 15,000 devices distributed geographically, and they manage everything with SUSE Manager, because you can put SUSE Manager, you can put proxies that we have. You have the SUSE Manager proxies that enable you to control all these locations, okay? And if you want to go bigger, you can use the hub architecture. We have a customer that is crossing the 100,000 systems in production with the hub architecture. I'm not talking about tests. I'm not talking about synthetic tests. I'm talking real systems in production. And most of them are not SUSE Linux. Okay? So we manage the other systems, big scale, and we can scale up really, really big. Okay, so if you have a big project, I will be happy to listen to you and help you with it, of course. Okay, but again, this is a very good example of a customer that is doing a distributed deployment and managing it and keeping it updated and keeping it up to date. Of course, they follow this ring idea of ring 0, ring 1, ring 2, ring 3. Ring 0, we have this lab with testings in the lab. Ring 1, we have these 3 shops that if we need to go running, we go running. We update this, everything okay. We extend it to 200 shops, and then to 20 shops, and then we extend it to the rest of the shops, okay? So they do it in batches, in rings. And finally, this is a small company, startup, that is starting right now. Nobody knows about it probably, right? Do you know about Microsoft? Have you ever heard about them? No, not at all. Well, I'm really proud to be able to say their SAP environment is being managed with SUSE Manager using SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. Okay, so if you want to manage big things, like very critical with, try to imagine the SAP system for Microsoft. Okay, just for a second, stop, think, how big is the SAP system for Microsoft? We are managing it, okay? So if we can manage this, I think we could manage most of the workloads that you have right now. With this, just let me tell you that we have a demo booth, demo kiosk. I really encourage you to go there because you're probably going to have really nice conversations, especially if you're deep down technically, or if you just want to see a nice demo of some things that we do. Like, for example, we have a customer that wanted to replace their points of sales that were with Ubuntu for SUSE Linux point of sale, which has a longer life cycle, and of course it was better for them, and we did it. So it reinstalled it didn't do it in place, it cleaned up the disk and reinstalled, but without having to go there from SUSE Manager. This is one of the demos. Another demo is converting from CentOS to SUSE Liberty, just in case you have CentOS, you're running end of life, you want to do it. We have the demo. There's another demo for SUSE Manager 5.0 that is going to be introduced tomorrow. And the demo is there. I'm not saying anything, so you go and see it. And of course, all these other sessions here for you to be able to gather more information here.
Any questions?
We have a dream about patching maybe 50 systems at a time. One day and next day, first test, then the QA, then production. But typically I end up only being allowed to patch 5 or 10 systems because we want to do extra checks. We are not sure it's good enough and so on. So it's like we don't trust the system enough when we're standing there and say, do I trust that I will going to patch 50 servers tomorrow? We end up doing 5 or 10s and then sitting and checking them for days before we continue.
And what is the question?
The dream is that we could automate our patching really fast. Mm-hmm. So we go for maybe patching once a month. But the scenarios I meet is often that we have to fight to be allowed to patch 10 systems and run around, do a lot of extra checks and have a lot of meetings to get it done.
It's a question of trust in the end.
Yeah.
Even with automation, you can't always solve the question of trust. But you have seen the staged approach that is there. You could really, what I would suggest, depending on what you have and how similar they are, to really have a staged one with a content lifecycle management, where you have a development or a testing stage, and then do the testing at once of all of the systems if they are not too complicated. Yeah. The good thing is, if you do manual patching, you have to look at a lot of constraints that exist. If you do it with a tool that helps you in that, whatever it is, you can trust that at least the constraints are fulfilled. And you can, in worst case, do a rollback. But it's a matter of trust, and the matter of trust can never fully be solved with tools. That's the fairest answer I can give you in that regard. We have a good consulting group that would most likely be able to help you in that regard. And maybe you come to the booth and we look a little bit closer with our architect and our pre-sales guys if we have more ways of helping you there. But I think the real solution is really to go into a content lifecycle management, because if you have now several weeks or days between, then you could use that for testing, and the investment in one virtual machine or whatever you have, depending on your scenario, where you do the basic tests, might be worth the money spent. But that needs to be looked at. And it's a very generic answer, I know. I'm sorry for that.
More questions?
So SUSE Manager is a pretty nice thing, I guess. But how about if I use it for configuration management for everything else? Is there high availability solution available for SUSE Manager itself? Because if I use it for configuration management and SUSE Manager goes down because of whatever, I cannot manage my 300,000 machines anymore.
So, I give you a slightly loaded answer, and most likely Miguel will jump on me. The first thing is, I would suggest to visit that session here with the 5.0 next generation, because what we have done there, not saying too much, but we have changed the structure. We have a more cleaner way of where we store our data and configuration data and separating that from the actual tool. That can help you in that regard to really get faster up. The other answer, and that's where it gets a little bit loaded, is if the single start of SUSE Manager takes so much time and the costs are so high that you really need a standing second solution there running. In theory, with the 5.0, you could do it, but you have a different problem then. Let's be honest on that. So the separation of the data and the tool itself, as we did it, and the cleanup there helps you with that regard. But of course, if you really want a second standby mechanism with everything duplicated, think about it's a huge amount of data you have. We have customers with 120,000 systems running, managed, and the data all in one database. Keeping that up to date takes its time and its toll. So yes, you can do some HA, but it comes at a cost, and the question is, if it's good enough, depending on how safe your systems are, to separate the data and have the data being backed up and have the system manager upcoming, or if you need a more complex solution. That's simply a matter of costs and balances. But you need 5.0 for that, and I recommend that session.
Yeah, it's very interesting what we have done for 5.0 in that regard, and this is one of the things we are looking forward to doing, steady and in that direction. And we don't want to, really, I'm like, I would like to tell you, but you have to go to the 5.0 session and to the 5.0 demo. But just one thing, the way we are working in 5.0 has completely decoupled logic and data. And when you do that, just storing the data, moving the data, copying the data, becomes a lot easier. Okay, so and now you have to go for the sequel. This is a prequel now. The sequel, the 5.0 session. You cannot miss it, and of course the demo in the booth.
With that, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.